We are recording this meeting for our archives as well as for other people that can't attend the meeting. They'll be able to watch the meeting in its full capacity. We have everybody muted as a default. We ask that if you have a question, and we're happy to answer questions, just put them into the chat, and we have several people that will be monitoring the chat, and we will get to questions as we go through the presentation this evening. After the meeting, we have a great survey that's being hosted through SurveyMonkey, and we ask that as many people that want to take that, it'll be the best way to document your opinions on the concepts that we've developed and some of the ideas that we're asking feedback for. We also will have a number of live polls during the meeting today. I believe we're scheduled for about an hour and a half. We'll probably finish a little bit early so that we can have some informal chatting. You know, some of us, the project people, will likely stay on after the meeting's formally done. But if you want to stick around and chat or ask things that maybe you didn't feel you wanted to put out there, or you just wanted to ask some informal questions, we're happy to chat and, you know, talk about what's happening. Next slide, please. So again, I mentioned our design advisory group. These are folks that live near the park. Most of them are on the call here today. If you have any specific questions for these individuals, feel free to reach out to them. Our design consultant team is working with them on a weekly basis. And the big monument that we're looking towards is we've developed 3 concepts that we'll be looking at later today. And the goal is to get to what we call a preferred alternative. This is kind of the best of all the concepts. And there's layouts that we're going to look at, and then there's playground equipment, theming, all kinds of things that we're going to try to build upon and get to a plan that we all agree upon that's going to be the best for the park. Next slide, please. So this project really stemmed from the work that Denver Parks and Recreation started many years ago with the Congress Park Pool Project. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about the pool project. It's its own project, but during the public engagement of that project, people were asking, what about the playground? Why would you make $1 million, several $1 million investment and still have this old, antiquated, small playground? Well, we heard what everybody said in the community, and DPR decided that it seemed appropriate to create its own project. So it took a while. In the meantime, the pool project has continued on, and they have completed their design. They're actually at what's called an RFP process, looking for contractors to build the pool. That is anticipated to start this spring, and that construction will last approximately a year to build the new pool facilities. So our team with the playground and the walks project, we started this summer, and we started to build our team, our consultants, engineers, all of the DPR staff that have supported the project. And we've been working towards getting the input from the public. And so here we are at our second public meeting. We'll continue to work on the design concepts for the next about month to 2 months. And the big milestone will be for us to get to what we call a 30% preferred alternative. That preferred alternative basically will settle all the horizontal components of the project to determine the sizing, the materials, the approximate layout of everything. That's the goal. Then the construction documents will be developed through the summer, and we anticipate having the CDs completed in the middle of 2021. And then the project's going to have to take a little bit of a sit down and settle until the the pool is completed. The plan is that the pool will be under construction and will be completed in the year 2022. And then at the end of that summer of 2022 is when we'll start the playground project. That's what we're working towards. And that's how everything's gonna kind of fall fall in line. As far as funding for the project, we have a number of sources that have contributed to the project. We have what's called the Capital Improvement Fund. That's what's funding the primary aspects of the playground. We have interior walks, which will address ADA issues and accessibility. And then we have an additional funding source from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, which will allow us to create perimeter walks along the East Alley, along 8th Avenue, and along Josephine. And that part of the project has not been developed so much, so we won't talk about it in great detail today, but we do want everybody to know that we will be addressing that down the road and as part of this project as it develops. The last part of our funding comes from the Elevate Denver Bond Fund. And for that, we have $30,000 to make improvements to the picnic shelter. Our hope is that we can expand the picnic shelter, add more seating, and perhaps improve some of the access to it. So said and done, our project is about $1.58 million. That includes soft costs, engineering, and construction. That's all I have to say to kick the project off. I think I'm gonna hand it over to Jay and let Jay take over and show us the concepts and the rest of the project.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the introduction. I'm Jay Hank. I'm with Flow Design Collaborative, and it's our team that's been working closely with Chris and the rest of DPR staff to put together concepts for Congress Park Playground. So first off, thank you everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate you participating in this meeting. Hopefully this is a little bit of a distraction from everything else that's going on in the world right now. So take a little bit of time away and we can talk about playgrounds. So really appreciate you being here with us. In order to get a little bit better idea of who's joining us, we want to see who's been a part of this previously and who's kind of coming in for the first time as far as the project and participation. Clark, can you go ahead and go to the next slide here? We're going to go ahead and pop up a poll question just to see, one, to make sure that you're paying attention and ready to participate and keeping you awake here, but also want to just see who's involved and who's here with us today so we can kind of gauge how we want to approach the discussion and how much we need to kind of step back versus the new information. So Christopher Hoy is gonna run through the polls here for us.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Christopher Hoy with Flow Design Collaborative. I'll be administrating the polls for you this evening, and we're going to launch this first one. Really, just trying to get, like Jay mentioned, just kind of an idea of who's on the outside here and watching this presentation and what your involvement has been thus far. So we're going to go ahead and launch the poll. And the poll question is, how involved have you been in the Congress Park Playground project? And you can have multiple answers here, so put in all that apply, please.
And we're not holding it against you if this is the first time that you've been here. We're excited to have new people, and hopefully the word is spreading and more people will get involved and be able to provide some feedback. So while we're waiting for these to come in, I will reiterate that we're doing the poll questions on here just to get some general feedback tonight, but we would appreciate it if you would go to the survey. The survey will open after the meeting. And so we would really appreciate it if you go ahead and go to the survey and take the survey as well. There'll be an opportunity to provide more detailed feedback and information, and that'll really assist us as we proceed after this outreach effort to try to get to a preferred alternative. So that's, as Chris mentioned, again, while we're kind of waiting for this to wrap up, as Chris mentioned, the goal tonight is for us to walk through the concepts that we've developed to date and get your feedback so that we can then develop a preferred concept that we'll move into construction documents with. So, all right.
So throwing up the results here, it's great. We've got over half the people here are the first time they've participated in this project. So that's awesome.
Good. That's helpful to know. So I'll spend maybe a little bit more time kind of talking about where we've been and giving a little bit more background. So that's helpful. I appreciate that. So our initial outreach effort was really just to get some feedback from the community related to the look and feel of the playground. What do we really want to try to have here? And so these next two slides are going to speak to the feedback that we received from the community through the initial survey. We had a little over 350 people that participated in that first survey. So that was great. If you help spread the word and you got your friends to take the survey, thank you. We appreciate it. Let's do that again. Getting that much feedback really helps us to make some decisions as we're proceeding. So this first slide really gets to the point of who we're communicating with and who that demographic is that we want to be talking with. And I think it's really good to see that the people that we're hearing from are from the community. Congress Park is a community level park. It's not a regional park. So although we're looking to expand the playground from what exists today, we're not looking to make this into a regional draw type of park. This is really renovations for the community and those people that live close by Congress Park. That doesn't mean that other people won't come and visit the park, certainly, and are welcome to, but that's really the demographic that we're trying to reach. So, 75% of the people roughly are within a mile of the park, and that's great to see. And more than 3/4 of them are getting there by foot or by bike. So, the bottom right, one of the questions we asked was, what challenges do people have accessing the park and the playground? And although it's great to see that, close to half the people don't really have any challenges, I think the thing to keep in mind is that there are still quite a few challenges that people see. So there's a large percentage of people that are either challenged by the busy streets, the surrounding streets, the challenge to get across those streets, the lack of existing park walks in Congress Park right now, or the condition of those walks. And so, as Chris pointed out, although the focus of tonight's meeting is going to be the playground, we do have additional funding to address access into and through the park. So keep that in mind. We're not going to go into it in great detail, but you'll see some of the aspects of our project tonight in the playground that make some connections there. And so having that be a component of the scope of the park is going to be really helpful when we get to construction as well. The themes that we heard coming from the community are expressed here on this summary slide. And so we really got a lot of feedback that the community would like to see a playground that is really nature inspired. So natural materials, that we can incorporate wood to the extent that is feasible, that we want to get some boulders and really kind of natural feeling materials into the playground. So that was one of the top themes that we heard. We did hear that there's a desire to have some traditional play elements, mostly focused on swings and slides. And so those are always elements that people are excited to see. And so we've certainly incorporated those into the concepts that we have today. Not only, traditional types of swings, but looking at other opportunities to be a little bit more inclusive and provide some swings and some opportunities that go a little bit beyond just the typical lap belt swing, but we wanted to keep those in here because that was obviously something that the community desired. The existing playground is relatively small, and you can go back and stay on the summary. And so really caters to a little bit of a younger age group right now. And so we definitely heard that there's a desire to expand that age group and provide play amenities that are really going to allow a broader age group of kids to be able to come and enjoy the playground and feel challenged and have a good time. And so again, that's something that we're trying to incorporate as well. And then of course, from an accessibility and inclusivity standpoint, that's something that we want to try to incorporate as well. And so giving all kids of all different abilities an opportunity to be a part of and participate in the playground with their friends and with the other kids that are running around. And so go ahead and go to the next slide. In combination, what we're seeing on the left side are really the project goals that DPR developed and came to us as we were beginning this project. And these are really the things that the department wanted to try to achieve with this project. And then combined with the feedback that we've heard, these are really the factors that we're considering as we're putting together all of these different concepts. And so what we're hoping that you'll see tonight as we go through these concepts is that they're really driven by these project goals and the feedback that we've heard from the community. So we're gonna, replace the existing playground, but we also want to expand that footprint to really meet the needs of a community level park, while we also make that playground more a safer space and more accessible to those that are coming to use it. The connectivity within the park is going to be important, getting people to the playground, but also getting to the other facilities in and throughout the park. And then obviously we've got this great project that's going to be occurring starting this winter with the pool renovation. And so we want to make sure that what we're doing is well integrated with the pool project. And so how that interface looks, you know, what the look and feel of the playground is, that it is cohesive with the project that has been developed for that pool renovation. So a lot of bullet points up here, and we want to get a general sense. I know I walked through these relatively quickly, but we do want to get a general sense of your feedback on whether or not you feel like we've captured what needs to be captured from a goal standpoint in order to really achieve a playground that's going to be successful for Congress Park and the community. So with that, we're going to put up our next poll question here. It's a relatively simple one.
Yeah, for our second poll tonight, we've got, based on the goals that Jay has just described and the community feedback, do the combined project goals adequately capture the elements needed to achieve a successful playground renovation at Congress Park? This is a simple yes or no. Hopefully we're hitting the mark, and we just kind of want to make sure that we're incorporating everything that.
However, with this, if you think that there's something that we're not fully capturing here, feel free to put that into the chat, right?
Yes.
That's any questions you have or any thoughts that you have, we'll be capturing that chat, and we'll be looking at that as well. It's good to see that everybody's feeling pretty comfortable with the approach that we're taking, because these are informing our concepts that we'll be presenting tonight. So this is good.
Give it another 15 or 20 seconds here, and then we'll close this one out.
So as we're going through the presentation, try to keep these in mind. I know you won't have them in front of you, but try to keep these aspects in mind and think about the concepts that we're presenting and how we're achieving these. And if it feels like maybe there's one or two of these that we could do a little bit better with, feel free to put that in the chat, and we'll come back and we'll reflect on that as we're going through refinements of the concepts.
So here's our results, 100%.
Like that.
That's great.
All right, thank you for participating in that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get into the presentation of the concepts. I do want to take just a couple of seconds here to just frame the location of where we're talking about within the park, especially since a lot of people are new to this project. This slide is very similar to a slide that we presented in the first community meeting. Really just an orientation slide, and want to kind of orient you with what's going on. The orange lines in this really represent the existing sidewalks within the park itself. So you can see that those are really contained to the northeastern portion of the park. That's why we have some additional funding to incorporate some additional circulation. The dotted white line around the perimeter depicts a general alignment for the perimeter walk. And so, again, we're not going to go into a lot of detail with that tonight, but just keep that in mind, that will be a part of the project. The area that we're going to be talking about in detail tonight is the area that's highlighted with the green dashed line right in the center. It is the area of the existing playground down to 8th Avenue, right about in alignment with Elizabeth Street. So that's going to be the focus of our meeting tonight. So the inspiration for what you're going to see in these different concepts tonight really comes from the feedback that we have received from the community, as well as with a little bit of the history from Congress Park itself. So Congress Park at one point in time was a nursery for providing trees for Denver Parks and Recreation. And we thought that was a neat theme to be able to tie into with the history of the park. And so that combined with the interest of really introducing nature and having an opportunity to have a more nature-inspired playground, we've really taken on this idea of the trees and the nursery and kind of a nature discovery type of theme. So it's not as literal as maybe a train theme or a rocket theme, but you'll see these elements come through in our concepts. And one of the great inspirations from the park itself is this wonderful bur oak that lives on the east side of the park. If you squint really hard, you can see the playground way in the background behind this tree. So this is a really wonderful oak that's in the park right now. And so we've really taken that as kind of an inspiration. You'll see in the form of the playground that start to come through. Some things in a little bit more literal sense than others. And this idea of you know, a tree house, we don't have the ability to really actually develop a tree house in the trees themselves. But we wanted to kind of bring that idea or that concept into the themes that we're showing. So you're going to see this inspiration kind of carried throughout all of the different concepts that we go through today. So we're going to start high level, and we're going to go through all three concepts. So we do have three concepts. We're referring to those as concepts A, B, and C. No particular order. We want to talk high level first, and what we want you to keep in mind and the considerations that we want you to think about are the locations of the playground, the relationships of the different program elements or the equipment within the playground itself, and then the circulation. How are you getting to the playground? How are you moving in and around the playground? I think one important thing to keep in mind is that there is an existing shade shelter. That shade shelter is going to remain in place in the location that it's at. And so one of the things that you'll see is that all of these playgrounds, although they're in a little bit different alignments and locations, are all centered on and surrounding that shade shelter. And the intent is that that shade shelter can work both in conjunction with the playground. So if there's an event going on or you wanted to come and have a picnic at the shelter, you can do that and still have a really nice adjacency to the playground. It is a permittable shelter. So because of that, we also wanted it to be able to work independently or separate from the playground and the play area and have a little bit of separation and buffer, and so that they could work independently. And I think also thinking that, you know, down the road, there may be a need or a desire to actually have a permitted shelter that's a little bit more separated from the playground, so that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily feel uncomfortable coming to the playground if there was a reserved event going on within this playground. So you'll see that carried throughout, that we're trying to create some buffer between the shelter and the play areas, but we're also trying to combine them so that they do work cohesively as well. So what we're looking at here is concept A, and the thing that stands out the most probably is the orange color, and the orange color represents the 5 to 12 play area. And so in this particular concept, we do have a separated 2 to 5 play area. So off to the west side of the shelter, on the left side of the shelter in the drawing, is where we've incorporated a 2 to 5 play area. So this is one concept. In concept A, this is the only one where we've actually physically separated those 2 different play areas. And so that's one thing to definitely consider, is that we do have this separation of those play areas. Obviously, this playground exists roughly in the same area where the current playground exists. We've pushed it a little bit to the north, and part of that is because we're really making a concerted effort to keep the existing tree canopy in place without impacting those trees. And so there are some pretty significant trees right in the middle of the existing playground. And to be able to come in and actually construct a new playground and new play surfaces around and directly under those could have a detrimental impact. And so we've actually expanded the footprint north of those trees, and then obviously to the west with the 2 to 5 play area. In this particular configuration, we've created a buffer between the parking lot and the playground. And so the connection and the access into the playground itself is really right in alignment with the new pool entry, and where we're seeing the red arrows for circulation. The secondary circulation really just brings you into the play pit and past the shelter itself. So that primary circulation you'll see connects down to what we're showing as the perimeter walk along 8th Avenue. So that doesn't exist today, but the intent is that we can make that connection to that perimeter walk. So as people come into the park, they have an opportunity to actually come and get to this location. We're also incorporating some additional seating areas, because we have heard that there's a desire outside of the shelter itself to have some additional seating for people that are there for the playground. So those could be picnic tables, they could be informal seating, but trying to incorporate those as well. So what we're going to do, this is A, keep that in mind. We're going to go to concept B now and look at it at the same level before we really get into the details. So in concept B, pretty similar. So let me point out some of the major differences. Still on the north side, so we're still containing the playground to the north side, kind of in alignment with the shelter. What you'll see here is we've actually combined the 2 to 5 and the 5 to 12 play areas. So they're in the same play pit. There is some separation. It's just not physically separated by a sidewalk, but they're in the same play pit. We have extended some additional play area, which is, you'll see is going to be a climber, which is a 5 to 12 climber. So kids for a little bit older age group in that separated area off to the east this time. So we've switched that and we've flipped it over to the east side. I think an important consideration here is that there is direct access from the parking area that is adjacent to the pool. Both stairs as well as an accessible ramp to get down into the playground area and the shelter. And then the same access exists over to the east side at that pool entry where we have an accessible ramp access as well as stairs in that location. And so that's, so the big differences between A and B is the combination of the 2 to 5 and the 5 to 12 play areas, the additional access location at the parking area are kind of the big major differences that we're seeing here. Let's go ahead and go to C. So C is going to be quite a bit different. We've obviously flipped the playground to the south side of the shade shelter here. One of the reasons that we've done that is the exposure. The existing playground exists in a place that sees a lot of shade in the wintertime, and that has an impact on the usability of that playground. All of these concepts are going to provide a little bit better solar aspect because we're shifting it out directly from underneath those trees. But we're also trying to really find a balance of incorporating spaces within existing tree canopy, as well as proposing new trees around these areas to create that shade. Shade is a really important part of the playground experience. And so we want to take advantage of those trees while at the same time being cognizant of not impacting them during construction. And so part of what we'll be expressing through these concepts is actually introducing more trees and new trees to begin to develop a newer tree canopy as some of these other trees in their lifespan, and we'll start to have some new tree canopy coming in here as well. In this particular scenario, we've combined again the 2 to 5 and the 5 to 12. So they're in the same play pit. It's a large play pit with kind of some intermediate structures in the middle, but they are within the same play pit. And then we've developed a swing area out to the west side of that play pit. We have the main circulation really is both from the parking area down to the perimeter walk as well as up to the entry area of the pool. And then in this particular location, in this particular one, we have a discovery walk that kind of separates itself but is adjacent to the playground. And we'll talk a little bit more about the discovery nodes that are proposed as a part of that discovery walk that we've also incorporated into the earlier concepts A and B. Obviously, if we flip the playground from where it exists today, then we need to do something with that area between the shelter and the pool. And so I think we have some really good opportunities to create a more passive area. We can have some additional seating that relates to the shelter, but we can also create a nice sloped seating area that can function both for the pool, when people are coming or leaving, coming or going to the pool, to be able to sit and really have a nice southern exposure. It can function when there's a bigger event going on at the shelter where people could have a little bit more informal gathering or seating opportunity up on that sloped seating area. And so that's what you're seeing up in that northern area. I think we have to be a little bit cognizant of how much development we want to do up there because obviously anything that we do up there will impact our budget for what we want to try to do with the playground. And so we're trying to avoid really doing an extensive amount of development north in this concept, but doing something that's going to be effective and still functional for the park in that area. Let's go ahead and go to the slide that compares all of them. That's a lot of information, I understand that. So again, we're keeping it at a high level right now. Following this, we're really going to dive down into the details of each one of these concepts. But we do want to get a little bit of feedback before we get into the details, just based on these three considerations of the location, the relationship of those program elements. So Do you like the 2 to 5 separated, or is it okay to bring them together in order to have a little bit different circulation pattern? Do you like the playground on the north side or the south side? One thing that I failed to mention, Clara, if you could go back to that concept C slide briefly. One of the important considerations of this concept is that it obviously brings the playground closer in proximity to 8th Avenue. In doing so, we had some concerns with that. And so you'll see that we're not going to get into detail right now, but we'll show that here in just a little bit with the slides, that we've really thought through what some potential mitigation strategies could be to address that, because we understand that could definitely be a concern. And I think one of the things that I want to point out just while we're at this slide is that we've incorporated that 2 to 5 play area further away. So that's why it's up at the north end of the play area and closer to the shelter. And you can see that we have a seating area directly adjacent to the walk at the very southern end, so that if you're a parent and your kids are playing and you had some concern with that, that you have a place to be able to go and sit between kind of the playground itself and 8th Avenue. So I would be remiss not to point that out, that there is definitely a closer proximity to 8th Avenue, but we've certainly thought through how we can try to mitigate that. So something that's a consideration, certainly, as you're thinking about concept C. So let's go ahead and go to that next slide, and I'd like to go ahead and pull up the third poll now. And Christopher, I'll let you go ahead and take it there.
Yeah, so we have our third poll of the evening, and basically like Jay said, just strictly looking high level location, relationship, and circulation. Which of the playground layouts would you prefer?
And it'll be interesting to see. It may change once we get into the concepts and we dive into a little bit more detail, but definitely some important considerations there as it relates to how you can get to the playground and move through it. Clearly, this circulation can function not only to access the playground, but also access the pool and provide some additional connectivity to the neighborhood and the community surrounding it. So you'll have more opportunity when you go to the survey to spend a little bit more time with these. I know we're moving pretty quickly tonight. We have a lot of information that we want to try to get out there. And so when you go to the survey, you'll definitely be able to take your time to really evaluate it at a little bit more detail and get a better sense for what makes sense. Or, you know, the next time that you're out at the park, to kind of think about, if you can go visit the park before you take the survey, think about what that feels like and where you think that this might want to sit. Give it a couple more seconds here. Looks like we're slowing down, so we can
trickling in here still. So we'll give it another 10 seconds.
So it'll be interesting to see how you what your preference is following the more detailed images that we'll show you here shortly.
All right, here's our results.
All right. About half the respondents preferred A.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we're really going to dig into the details. So there's going to be a lot to take a look at here. So we're going to dive into concept A. So now we've kind of cleared that high level overlay, and we're looking at a plan view of concept A. So this, again, we've got the playground between the shelter and the new pool entry with the 2 to 5 play structure on the west side. So keep in mind, right, we've got a buffer between the parking lot. So our main access is down along the pool entry, and just adjacent to that is the main 5 to 12 play structure you can see sitting in there. You also have an opportunity up in this location to access the playground directly off of the level of the entry. So let me explain that we've got about 4 feet roughly of elevation change from people that are walking on the sidewalk going into the pool and the surface of the playground down below. So the pool entrance is higher, playground is lower. And so this actually gives us a pretty neat opportunity to come in and do some sloped playground elements. And so in this particular case, you can come right into the playground onto a higher level and have a surfacing that slopes down into the playground. And that allows us to do an on-grade slide. And so you'll see a slide coming off of that entrance location here. So that's the secondary entrance location that we were showing in the previous slide. So we've got main 2 to 5 play structure over here. I'm going to jump all the way over and show you that, that real separation of the 2 to 5. I said 2 to 5 up here. I meant 5 to 12. That real separation down to the 2 to 5. So for those of you that feel like it's nice to have your kids play a little bit more separated from some of those older kids, this might be a concept that you would prefer. It really gives that separation. One of the things that we've tried to do here is actually incorporate it with the sand play. And so if you're familiar with the playground, there's an existing art installation within the sandbox, and we've actually kept that. And so that actually stays within the sandbox, and we've incorporated that sand play directly adjacent to that 2 to 5 play area. And we've also got some swings in here so we can have a little bit smaller swing in it that relates with the bucket swing to some of the smaller kids. In the 5 to 12 area, we've also are proposing doing some sort of timber climber, again, trying to get to that natural theme and having some of those natural materials. And then we also have some other acorn climbers in here that you'll be able to see in some of the other images. We have a combination of surfacing. So we have poured-in-place rubber surfacing, which tends to be more accessible. And then we also have EWF, which is the wood fiber surfacing in the playground as well. As much as we'd like to be able to do an entire poured-in-place rubber surfacing, unfortunately it has a really negative impact on the budget, right? It's expensive to do, and so by doing that, it limits us where we can spend money on playground equipment and other improvements. And so we're really trying to find that balance of incorporating poured-in-place surfacing that's going to allow a little bit more accessibility and access to some of these features, with trying to incorporate the EWF that stretches our budgets a little bit more, right? One of the things that I want to point out is that in addition to just the playground structures, we're proposing in all 3 of the concepts to do what we're calling discovery pods. And so this again is kind of trying to integrate the idea of nature and that discovery aspect, and really gives us an opportunity to bring in some more passive recreation opportunities that may be more sensory related. And so with that, I want to go ahead and jump to our precedent images to show the playground equipment and some of those items in here. I'm going to first speak to those discovery elements that I was just referencing. So within these discovery pods, some of the ideas that we're thinking about and that we're proposing is to bring in some elements. Over here on the right, we're showing kind of an embossed panel that could be used both as a sensory, just for being able to touch. We could incorporate Braille into that as well. And then it could be a place where you could come and do rubbings. And so, we know in the summertime that there are summer classes here. And so it'd be great for the kids to be able to bring out crayons and bring out paper and do rubbings on these and incorporate the trees of the park, right? So in here, we're showing that bur oak. Maybe we could do a linden, which is living in the playground right now, and really have an opportunity to kind of introduce some of those elements on more of a sensory scale. This lower right is another one of the discovery pods. So we want to bring in this idea of a magnifying glass, so kids can go out and explore, and they can find, different parts of the tree, or they can find insects, or they can find stuff that they discover out in the park itself, and bring it back to this magnifying glass. And so we'd like to maybe do something a little bit bigger, but incorporate it into a place where they can come in and really kind of explore the things that they're finding. And then a place where, just have some whimsical seating opportunities and elements, and a place for kids to come off to the side of the playground and maybe take a break for a minute, and move away from the fast activity and have a little bit more of a passive element. So you're going to see those carried throughout all of the different concepts. And that's really kind of just integrating that discovery idea. The center picture here is the larger 5 to 12 play structure that we're proposing in this. And one key thing that I want to point out is that although we're showing specific equipment with each concept, we do have some flexibility as we go to a final concept to maybe mix that up a little bit. So as you're looking at these, without trying to confuse it too much, if you thought that concept A was your preferred concept, but you really like the play equipment that comes in Concept C, we have some flexibility to make some changes there. Maybe not with everything, but that's something that we want to hear. If you have comments about that, that's certainly something that you can put in the chat, and you'll have an opportunity in the survey to provide feedback on as well. So in this particular concept, the 2 to 5 is a matching play structure, very similar in nature. One of the things that we liked about this structure is that really kind of relates to the more contemporary theme that is occurring at the swimming pool. And so we can still incorporate some natural materials into the structure and colors, but it also takes on a little bit more contemporary feel. A little bit different than what you'll see in the other concepts that we'll be showing you. From an inclusive standpoint, we really want to try to make sure as much of this is inclusive as we can, knowing that probably not everything is going to be entirely inclusive, but we still want to try to integrate that as much as we can. And so, certainly providing some supportive swings is a really simple way to do that. And so throughout this, all of the concepts we'll be showing that and plan on incorporating those. And I think there's some different ways that we can modify those swings to have maybe a little bit more adjustable harness, because we have heard through several different conversations that a lot of times those are really challenging, and for smaller kids or kids who don't have as much upper body strength to really stay in those. And so there are some adjustable harnesses as well that we can look at incorporating. We really want to incorporate some play structures that can really get all the kids together and be able to play on. And so we'll be showing some different spinner opportunities that we can include, both those that are wheelchair accessible and others that can get a group of kids in and participate together. And then we're also showing in this particular concept a timber climber. So again, trying to bring in those natural elements and really give a kind of open-ended play opportunity for the kids. And then additionally, we heard pretty loud and clear that traditional swings were something that people wanted to keep in the playground. So that'll get carried through all the different concepts as well. So with that, again, I'm going to keep moving here. We're going to take a look at some renderings to really show what this space might look and feel like. So I'm going to give you just a second to kind of take a look at these, and then I'll walk you through them a little bit. So up in the upper left, this is an image basically up over the parking lot, kind of looking down into the playground to the south. You can see the shade structure back in the background here. And so the majority of trees that you're seeing here are existing trees that we're really going to be working to construct the playground around in this scenario. We are showing some new trees because we would like to incorporate some additional tree canopy like we mentioned before. The main 5 to 12 play structure is over on the left side of this image. And then you can see some kind of whimsical fun elements with some acorn climbers that are placed within this port in place. It's a little bit tough to see here, but this is a sloped port in place. So this is coming off of the pool entrance on the left, and then dropping down into the playground area that slopes down into these timber climbers. And then you can see over here, we've got the swings kind of backed up to the back of the play area, as well as some of the more accessible elements. And then these are along the edge, kind of tucked back into that existing tree canopy is where we're incorporating the discovery pods. So just off the playground. So again, it becomes a nice element of the playground, but is a little bit separated and can be a space to kind of move off from. And then over to the right of that, of the shelter is the 2 to 5 play structure. A little bit different view, more focused on the 2 to 5 over here in the top right picture. This is actually kind of from the west side, looking back to the shade shelter in the middle. The pool is way back in the background. And so this is the 2 to 5 structure. We've got the 2 to 5 structure with a little bit of, with the swing structure in here as well. One thing that's a little bit tough to see, there's a great little spring rider that exists in the playground right now, a little chipmunk. Really fits well into this whole inspiration and this theme. So we'd love to try to find a way to incorporate that back into this playground and keep that little chipmunk as a part of this playground. I do want to point out, these kind of secondary seating opportunities that exist sort of throughout the space. So in addition to the existing structure, there are opportunities, whether there's an event going on there or not, to be able to sit a little bit closer to the playground. So we've got one incorporated right in here to the 2 to 5 space. Moving down to the bottom left, This is kind of from the other side, swinging around, looking from the east back to the playground. So again, you've got the shelter here. This is a larger 5 to 12 shade structure. Looking just over the top of that 5 to 12 structure, you can see our slide that introduces you into the playground from the pool entry space. And this is the pool entry just off to the right. So this is a stair access coming down, but we also carry that up and have an accessible access coming up just to the right of those stairs. And then the bottom right, very similar to the first one, but kind of zoomed out a little bit further to be able to show the entrance from the parking lot up to the pool and the access to get down into the playground. There may be an opportunity to incorporate a little bit more informal access off to this right side, but definitely a little bit more challenging as just the way that this lays out and the slopes that we're dealing with in that location. So certainly something that we can look at, but not currently included in this concept right now. A lot of information there. Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to go through concept B and concept C, and then we're going to talk about, again, kind of preferences as we take a look at these. So let's go ahead and jump over to concept B. So again, just stepping back for a minute, concept B is on the north side of the shelter between the pool entry and the shelter, flipping the additional kind of expanded play space to the east side this time. This one is combining the 5 to 12 structure. So 5 to 12 structure is very similar in the location on this one. The 2 to 5 structure is in the same play pit, but a little bit separated by some of these intermediate play structures. So it lives over here on kind of the left side of this play area. Access into this playground area, again, one of the major differences is that we have access coming directly off the parking lot. And so this is a staired access to get us down to the level that we need to be at for this playground to be relatively flat down in this space. But we have an opportunity to potentially bring this ramp down around and then access that same walk. And then we also have the same access that we had in concept B coming down into the from the new pool entry area. This incorporates a little bit larger timber climber. So this is a little bit larger structure that kind of takes its own space out here. And then we're doing a little bit of buffering from the existing play fields out in the turf to the east here. A lot of the similar elements getting carried through with the acorn climbers in the center, and then the discovery pods again in a very similar location to concept A. And then again, incorporating these seating areas kind of throughout the space that can be used in conjunction with the playground, and then also making that connection down to the perimeter walks on the southern side. So let's go ahead and go to the precedent images and take a look now that we kind of have an idea of what we're looking at here. Big picture off to the center left here is what is being proposed for the larger structure. So this starts to take into kind of that idea of the tower, getting up into the canopy and the treehouse, as well as really kind of bringing in the slides, right? So slides is something that we really heard, and getting these bigger slides into this concept is something that is a little bit different than concept B or excuse me, A, that didn't have quite the same level of height as this structure. Bottom left is the 2 to 5 structure. So a little bit more similar in nature to what we saw in A, but has a little bit of that contemporary feel and some natural materials for that 2 to 5 structure that's contained within that same pit. Bigger timber structure, like we pointed out, and then some of the similarities, obviously, with the traditional swings. Trying to incorporate a spinner. This one shows a little bit different option or opportunity for a spinner. So I'd love to hear if you have preferences on types of spinners and which ones maybe are a little bit more exciting or easy to use for kids and groups of kids. And so a lot of similarities with the discovery pods and the discovery nodes on this one with the locations and how those might be incorporated. So let's go ahead and take a look at the renderings on this one. Top left is very similar to the first one on the last concept that we looked at. It's up over the parking lot looking down into the playground to the south. So you've got the shelter. You'll notice, obviously 2 to 5 is now come into the playground, and we've shifted the larger play area, the expansion of the play area over to the eastern side of the playground. One of the neat aspects of this playground option is the ability to actually incorporate. You can see it better down here in the lower left. a bridge. So instead of having a sloped paving to get down into the playground off of the pool entry, we've actually incorporated a bridge coming directly off of that pool entry into one of the structures. And so that gives us an opportunity to do some sensory elements up on that bridge, and pull a slide off of that bridge right down into the play structure, and maybe do a little bit more of a natural climber to get back up to that area and use that slide. And so in that top photo, you can see that bridge connection coming off of the left here. Again, we have a combination of poured in place and more wood fiber in this playground, trying to balance that surfacing material. And so this area, kind of on the western edge of the playground, really becomes kind of that 2 to 5 space, and probably provides a little bit more from an accessible perspective into that playground. So really thinking about how people get into and move around this space. Top right photo is from the west side the east side looking back to the west, the shade shelter directly in the middle. So you can see that larger timber climber kind of over here as a separate climbing structure, giving an opportunity to go over and play in a little bit different space. You can get a better look or another look of that bridge connection. Really neat opportunities to get in and under that bridge. And this structure itself actually offers some pretty neat inclusive opportunities underneath, directly underneath the structure as well. And then the bottom right is looking more at that kind of 2 to 5 play area. So you can see this is the poured in place, 2 to 5 structures right in the middle. We've got a spinner over here to the right, and then the swings to the left. So some similarities to concept A, but some pretty significant differences as well as far as the accessibility or the access into the playground, the combination of the 5 to 12 and 2 to 5 play pit in this one. All right, let's jump to C, and then we'll get to where we can get some feedback and maybe open it up to some questions here in a little bit. Concept C, again, remember, much different in nature than A and B. We've flipped it to the south side of the shade shelter, so it has a lot different feel to it. I'm going to start up at the top, just kind of simply again pointing out this sloped turf area. Nice little passive area that can work in combination with the shade shelter as well as the pool entry, and really function just to kind of expand that space in between the 2 play fields and the pool area coming off of that pool deck entry area. We do have access directly from the parking lot, so this is a accessible ramp that would come down to the shelter, as well as the same access point over here at the pool entry. So this access at the pool entry is pretty consistent throughout all 3 of the concepts. As we come down to the playground, we've got the 2 to 5 that's more interior to the park area and the shelter itself. Again, that was intentional to provide a little bit more of that separation for the younger kids from the 8th Avenue, because we know that could be a consideration or concern. So combined 5 to 12 and 2 to 5 play area, all kind of living here on the east side of the main access coming through this space. And so we've got a 5 to 12 tower down in this location. So a little bit different play equipment, a little more natural materials in this one. So these are actually both made out of wood. Trying to find that balance between some of those structures that introduce those natural materials, but are also structures that can be more maintainable from a DPR maintenance standpoint, and that are going to have a really solid longevity to them. Got a swing pit over to the left here. So really have taken all of the swings out of kind of the main play pit, and they're separated all together. So we've got some different swing opportunities all kind of living together over here on the western side. And adjacent to that, we have a seating area, again, very intentional in terms of the location of that. As you come into this playground from the south, you know, that can kind of be a place where people can sit, again, to if you have concerns about the location, or you know, it also has a really nice proximity to the swings and to this play area as well. In this particular concept, we actually have incorporated a discovery path that can kind of meander in and through the existing tree canopy. So there is a tree canopy that exists right now down in this location of the park. And so we really kind of want to take advantage of that, again, from the standpoint of trying to make sure that we're being cognizant and we're working with those trees, and we're not being destructive to them, but we want to take advantage of those as well. And so we've incorporated those discovery nodes kind of in this walk that's adjacent to and accessible from the playground itself. We also have a little gateway and a small seat wall down here on the southern end, again, to really help with that entrance and develop kind of a perceived barrier between the playground itself. It's not a formal entrance to the standpoint that there's actually a gated location there, but it still provides some vertical elements that are going to provide a little bit more of a buffer from that perimeter walk along this southern edge. So let's go ahead and go to the precedent images there. So a little bit different play equipment here. Upper left is the 5 to 12 tower. So something similar to this is what we're looking at potentially being able to incorporate into this concept C. Again, keeping in mind that if you preferred some of the other concepts, we have some ability or some flexibility in terms of what can actually come in here from that play equipment side, but this could also be used in concept A or B, bringing in and incorporating a little bit more of those natural materials, opportunities to have, a bridge. We're not showing a bridge in this concept, but if we took this one to concept B, that might be something that we would be able to do. Again, kind of tying into that treehouse theme with the 2 to 5, it's closer to on grade, but that's kind of the idea and the feel of this 2 to 5 play structure. A little bit different climber structure in here. So instead of the timber climber, we've got this nice wave structure. Again, natural materials, but incorporates a little bit more contemporary feel to it. And then in place of the acorn climbers, we're showing some boulder climbers. We'd heard from quite a few people that the boulder climbers were something that were appealing. And then on the swing side, a little bit different is the incorporation of this group swing. We're not showing that in the other concepts. That may be something that if we get a lot of feedback that that's really desirable, we could potentially incorporate into those, but this is the only one that shows up at this time. So again, carrying that same theme of these discovery elements into this discovery walk that would move around the playground and in and out of the existing tree canopy. So let's take a look at those renderings of concept C. So the upper left, this is just off of the shade shelter, kind of up closer to the pool, looking down toward 8th Avenue in the background here. And so this is the 2 to 5 play area in the foreground and the connections into the discovery walk, and one of the discovery nodes here showing up in the front portion of this playground. You can see some neat terrain and some slope into the poured in place in the center to provide some interest and be able to tie these play structures and these climbing structures into a little bit differentiation of that surfacing. And then obviously the 5 to 12 tower back in the background and the swings off in the back there. This upper right is looking back from the other direction, so kind of over those western play fields. We've got the swing pit in the foreground. This 5 to 12 play structure, you can see a little bit of this gateway now kind of peeking through from this perimeter walk, and so we've got this entrance gateway coming off of that south, and really provides a nice interface with 8th Avenue as people are driving by, and you can see this whimsical little gateway coming into the playground, and really has a nice visibility from the community on that south side. This lower left is up above the pool, so this camera's kind of really high above the pool looking down. We've got the shade shelter in the middle. You start to see this passive area with some additional seating on the north side of the shelter, really incorporated into that tree canopy. Nice little space in there with this sloped turf area in the foreground, and then the play area back in the back. And so you can see, you have an opportunity to access up from the parking lot down to the shade structure and the playground, as well as up to the pool entry. Bottom right picture, last one here, is really hanging out up over 8th Avenue. So you can see 8th Avenue kind of down on the right side, looking at really trying to create more of a vegetative buffer between that entrance area and this gateway. So you can see the gateway here showing up. We've got some verticality, right? So bringing a little seat wall up to create some informal seating along that entryway, and also just creating that buffer. One of the things that I want to point out that we haven't really talked about with this is that we're showing a buffer here. I think one of the conversations that we do also want to have is whether or not there's an opportunity to create an additional pedestrian access point, right kind of in alignment with Elizabeth Street. This would essentially be mid-block of the park between the alley and Josephine. We have heard that it already gets used. Some of these side streets get used, people park and access. And so it's not a conversation that we've really had a chance to dive into detail, but we will, as we start to talk about this perimeter walk, about whether or not there's an opportunity to make an additional crossing of 8th Avenue and what that would look like. And so we can't really speak to what that might be from a protection standpoint or how feasible that is, but certainly something that through this process we'll be exploring with Denver's Department of Transportation as well. All right, so a lot of information there. I do want to leave some time to be able to talk through these. So we're going to go on to our next poll question. Now that we've really kind of had an opportunity to dive into detail concepts A, B, and C, we'll show those here and let you go ahead and take a poll.
All right. So which detailed playground concept do you prefer now that you've seen the 3 concepts in a little more detail?
It's tough. There's a lot of information there, and we recognize that. And that's why we think it's really important that, you know, following the presentation tonight, maybe let this sink in a little bit, spend a little bit of time tomorrow going in and taking a look at that, or over the weekend. We'll try to leave this poll open, I think, for probably, or excuse me, the survey will be open for probably a minimum of 2 weeks. So plenty of time to get in there and take that survey, really kind of dive into these concepts. I think the team did a really nice job of pulling together 3 really different concepts. And so we think it's probably pretty challenging to figure out which one might be a preferred concepts. There are certainly some differences between them that may make one appealing for one reason and another for another reason. And so a lot to kind of think about and explore here and really get into. So please take your time, take some time to go in and take that survey, you know, over the course of the next week or so, and provide your feedback that way. And this is helpful to kind of get a sense. It seems like we've seen a little bit of a change here as we've moved through these concepts from originally, I think it was a little bit more weighted to concept A, and now it's concept B. And so that may be more specifically related to the equipment options that are there. And if that's the case, you know, you can point that out in the chat. Certainly, but this is helpful to kind of see how people are evaluating these.
Yeah, this is great.
So that was a lot of information. I hope I didn't miss any major points there. I think, again, thinking back to those goals that we presented early on, both, you know, the department's goals initially and what we were hearing from the initial feedback that we got from the community, whether or not we're really achieving those. I hope that we are. I think we've captured the majority of that in these concepts. And the intent now is to take your feedback that we get through this survey and really develop a final concept that we've all talked about is probably a concept D, right? It's a little bit different. And so we'll wait and we'll get some feedback from you guys. We're going to be reaching out to the department and operations and having the same presentation and this conversation with them, because it's definitely some considerations with how operations can access and maintain these areas. So we'll be working on developing that final concept to have something complete before the end of the year. And so we'll have some sort of presentation for that. It may be, we don't know what the format of that'll be yet, but that'll definitely get communicated out to the public once we've compiled all of the feedback from this second round of survey questions. And so we'll be working on that through the rest of the winter and be wrapping that up toward the end of the year. And then we'll be moving into developing the construction documents. And like Chris said, we'll end up completing the construction documents and then there'll be a bit of a pause before construction so that the pool construction can complete. The pool can open up, and then once the pool closes down for the season, we'll go to the playground construction. And so that way we're not having issues of contractors kind of stepping on each other's toes, and the park isn't in full construction mode when the pool wants to open up for that inaugural reopening. So that's really the next steps following this meeting tonight. So with that, Chris, I'm gonna open it up to questions. Clara, you can go to that next slide. I guess, Lori, let's start with you. See if there have been any questions that have come up that you want to bring up, and start from that standpoint, and then see where we get.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Jay. As it was mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, my name is Lori Tabachnik. I'm the associate planner on this project from the parks planning side of things. So actually there were a few themes that came up a lot. One being if you could talk about the connection through the park, like east-west connection and the alleyway off of Detroit, and just how all of those things will tie together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that. That is something that we're not showing in these concepts right now. However, we will be taking a look at that. We're going to be looking both at improving the accessibility of the existing walks that are incorporated or included in the northeastern portion, more centered around the tennis courts and the basketball courts, as well as looking for opportunities to provide additional access through the park. So that could be to the restroom. We're going to be looking at how we can actually make connections between the playground and the existing restroom facility, as well as potentially to the parking lot on Josephine on the west side, between the baseball, softball fields, and then improving the connection to the alleyway. And so we don't anticipate necessarily having enough funding from a construction side to be able to construct all of those. So we're going to be evaluating those and then working through from a prioritization from the department standpoint, and with the design advisory group. And if we feel like there's a need to come back out and really kind of get some more feedback from the community, we'll look at how we might do that. So that's a good question, because we didn't talk about it and we're not showing it right now, but we'll be looking at that internal circulation and connectivity for all the different facilities as a part of this project as well.
Great, thanks. Something else that kept coming up, I think you kind of addressed it, but it might be good to just talk through it again. With the existing trees on site, you know, obviously wanting to maintain them and not destroy them through this process. How are we kind of addressing shade, even though the playground's getting a little shifted, maybe out of the canopy of the trees?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, you know, first and foremost, we are definitely going to work around these trees to the greatest extent possible. We're also going to be working with forestry to look at the health of the existing tree canopy. Obviously, we've seen some loss of, especially the conifers along that southern edge. And so one of the ways that we're going to be addressing that is the introduction of new trees. Obviously, for a few years, that doesn't provide the same level of shade that exists there currently. But over time, you know, that'll start to incorporate that new shade. We're also trying to take advantage of the existing trees that are there. And so although we're not necessarily developing and constructing directly under them, we are developing in spaces around them that will allow us to take advantage of that existing tree canopy. The structures themselves do provide some shade within the structures. We don't have specific shade, additional shade structures incorporated or included. We have a shade shelter that's adjacent to it, right? So we're taking advantage of that to be able to use as a picnic area. The additional picnic areas right now are really more open. And so, you know, from again, some of it comes back to a budget. If there's a desire and a need to really incorporate more shade structures, then it's something that we could certainly take a look at. But obviously, that has an impact on what we can do from other elements within the playground. So it's really trying to be strategic about where we do put elements with the existing tree canopy, introducing new tree canopy, and knowing that we have an existing shade structure that can also be integrated and be a part of the playground experience.
Perfect, thanks. There were also a few questions actually about the retaining wall and whether there could be climbing incorporated into the retaining wall, like climbing structure, or and also just the a fall zone in between the retaining wall and a climbing structure, and if that would create any conflict.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think there definitely are some opportunities for that, and in fact, I've had some really good conversations about even creating or developing some more sensory, whether it's form liners and things that actually create forms and shapes on those that could potentially be used for climbing. I think the thing to keep in mind is that it's not a huge wall, right? So we're talking about 4 feet roughly. So from a true climbing aspect, it probably doesn't do a lot. There's probably a little bit of an opportunity to put some climbing on that. Certainly there's going to be a fall zone associated with that would have to be considered. And so there would be probably some limitations to where that could be as it relates to other play structures. Again, part of it is trying not to go too far when we know that we are going to have budget conversations all the way through this. So I think as we get into it and we really refine these concepts and we start to really dive into what are some of those details that we can incorporate that really help to strengthen even the theme and provide some of those more sensory opportunities. I think there's some neat things that could be done there if we can fit that within the budget that we're working with. So that's a good thought.
Yeah, kind of related just to the idea of, different types of play elements. There was a question about whether you all and we had considered like ping pong or anything for older kids. And I know that was a question on the previous survey, but I wonder if you could talk to the results of that.
Yeah, we did. And so that was a question that we had on the earlier survey. The feedback that we got as far as the element that was most preferred was a slack line. So if you're familiar with putting up basically a big piece of webbing between what has historically been trees, which is not allowed by Denver Forestry, and so incorporating posts so that people could come out and put up slack lines, that got the most traction. And as we explored that, we really felt like this particular location of the playground is probably not the best location for that. However, there is a location to the east and more located closer to the tennis courts, where there's some open space within some other tree canopy that would probably be a more effective location for that element to exist. There was some interest in some of the other passive play elements, and I think probably most effective would be in concept C, where we have some of that more passive area on the north side of the structure, and that was generally where we kind of showed those elements in our earlier bubble diagram. So I think there's opportunities to do that. I think the slack line definitely got the most interest, and I think that's something that we can continue to explore as a part of the project and relatively easily accommodate in the park in a little bit different location that would provide it a little bit more space, as well as being able to be in and amongst the existing trees a little bit further to the east.
Great.
Yeah, I was going to chime in for a second to say that one of the goals of the project is to appeal to multiple generations, so different age groups. So not just kids, but adults, all the different types of users. And so, we're trying to fill those gaps and, expand the playground to include uses for all kinds of different people. Back to you, Lori.
Thanks, Chris. Another question that came up a few times was about lighting. Could you talk a little bit about the existing lighting and if there will be any improvements to it?
Yeah, so we do anticipate coming back in with some lighting. It's pretty limited lighting out there right now, and I think generally they become targets as much as anything. So we've seen a lot of issues. The existing lights, I think, are at least maybe partially not functioning right now. They're the big globe lights right now, which are really attractive for people to vandalize, apparently. So we will be coming back in with some additional lighting in this space. We didn't show it in these concepts necessarily, but there will be some lighting in this space. And I think as we look at the connectivity, it might be a conversation that we want to expand on a little bit further with Denver Parks and Recreation, as far as how controlled or how focused do we want to be with that lighting specific to the shelter and the playground? Or is there a desire to try to look at expanding on that, kind of outside as you come into that space from a circulation standpoint. So lighting will be a part of it. We don't know necessarily to what extent yet, but certainly within that main playground and shelter area, we'll be incorporating some additional lighting, hopefully more vandal proof.
Might add to that as part of the pool project, they'll be upgrading the lighting around the pool, and they're also adding security cameras as part of that. So that should address some of the concerns about security around that area.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate that.
So just a few other miscellaneous kinds of questions, and this one actually might be for Chris, but could you speak a little bit to the lifespan of natural materials? People were chiming in that City Park, is obviously made of wood and now getting very old and perhaps a little run down, and I'm just curious about the lifespan of these kinds of natural materials.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. We see a typical lifespan on one of these playgrounds being around 20 to 25 years. With the advent of a lot of newer materials like pressure treated woods, different types of applications that can be put on the exterior, we think that those lifespans are increasing. From a budget standpoint, it's definitely something that we're concerned about and something that we're going to be considering in terms of making decisions about which type of play equipment and materials that we're going to use. Safety also is of concern, and using those wood materials, they can be, they have a tendency, their natural tendency is to break down. So we're trying to keep them together, and we're looking at existing projects that have been put in recently and trying to find the best means and methods to deliver a project, a playground that is safe and is going to have considerable longevity. That's our goal.
Great, thanks, Chris. I think this might be one of the last questions, but please feel free to jump in, Jay or Chris, if I missed any. But are there any safety concerns with the towers that are kind of enclosed? And is that a consideration?
Yeah, I think that's always a consideration, and we've heard that. I think one of the things that when you get into developing a tower, there ends up being a little bit more enclosure because of the aspects of getting into those heights, and so it's definitely a consideration, and I think it's got to be taken into consideration with the fact that we have additional improvements in lighting, and as Craig mentioned, some cameras in these locations. So I think certainly it's something that is a factor and should be considered. But at the same time, I think we want to look at these opportunities to be able to take some of these structures up and get some height and have that feel. So I think certainly if that's more of a concern or consideration for you, we want to hear back. And if there's a piece of play equipment that would make you feel more comfortable, I think that's something that we want to hear from you. But I think it always needs to be a consideration, but I think it also has to be weighed with some of the other improvements and knowing that there'll likely be more activity and more people and eyes on these facilities as they become improved and you have more people using them as well. Chris, I don't know if you wanted to add to that at all.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's a good answer. And, we're always concerned about homeless folks and how they're using the parks. We have a great ranger program where our rangers are patrolling the parks on a regular basis and trying to help people that have certain needs, and also trying to prevent people from, taking up residence in our play structures. It's always kind of a tricky, dicey sort of topic, but, we try to address it, and we try to make sure that our parks are safe and that our equipment is being protected.
Thanks, Chris. I think with that, we have covered most of the questions. We will be looking back through all of the questions and all of the comments from tonight, and can look back and try to address any that we may have missed.
Well, this is great. We really appreciate everybody taking the time out of your afternoon to come and be with us, and hopefully, again, it distracted you for a little bit. Please take our survey. Lori, can you confirm when that will be going live?
Yes, so it is already live. So
Thank you.
everyone can feel free to pop that link into their, Google Chrome, and it should pop right up. I also pasted it into the chat, so you can click on it right from there. In a few days, it will be on our DPR website. But for now, the link that you see there is the easiest to access it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for putting that in there. So we have been recording this. We'll get it edited and it will also go up onto the website. So if you know others that weren't able to join us today, we did take a little bit different approach today based on what we heard from the last meeting, and we went with a little bit earlier time slot. So we know that we're always going to miss somebody. So if there's somebody that you think maybe would have been interested in being a part of this and want to go back and watch this, it will be posted on the website. And so they'll have an opportunity to go back and do that in conjunction with taking the survey. But please spread the word, get the information out to your neighbors, to others that you know might have an interest and want to provide some feedback. And we'll be watching that closely so that we can start to develop a final preferred concept. But we hope that we've given you a tough decision here tonight with some different concepts. Thank you to the team, Chris and Lori, for your guys' hard work and getting this thing together. And feel free to reach out with questions and please go and take that survey.
Yeah, agreed. I just want to say thank you to everybody on our team, our DPR staff, support, Jesus, Lori, Flow Design Collaborative. Everybody's done a great job. Thank you for all your efforts.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We appreciate you being here. We'll, like Chris said, we can hang around for a few more minutes if there are people that wanted to ask some specific questions. We can stick around for a few minutes. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have something that you want to ask, and we'll be here.
Okay, I have one question. For all the time that I have been using that park, I have never seen an acorn off of that oak tree.
Come on, Lois.
That's all I do know.
So we'll have to plant some oaks.
Yeah, well, they just don't do well here. And it's just hard to get them to seed. There's a gazillion, there's a buckeye over there, and there's just all kinds of seedy stuff. But so I just had to kind of throw that one in there.
We're going to plant some new ones.
Plant some new ones that'll produce acorns. Other than that, it was fun. It was great seeing the park design. I'm thrilled that glad that Chris told me about it, and I'm on 7th and Fillmore. I will let the gang over here know that this is going on.
Awesome.
Yeah, please do. Thanks for joining us.
You may regret it, but so thanks everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good seeing you.
Lois.
Thanks, Lois.
Appreciate your participation.
See ya.
Hi guys, I just wanted to say thank you. You're doing a great job with the community engagement. We're going to push it out to Teller Elementary. We did push it out, but it was in the midst of, we're in the middle of our annual big auction. So we have an auction and we had a bunch of gear, and of course we're dealing with, COVID stuff and Halloween. So in the midst of all that, it might have gotten lost. So thank you for recording it and providing a survey link. How long do you think the recording and survey will be open?
I anticipate probably keeping the survey open for about 2 weeks. The recording will be up there for as long as Denver wants to keep it up there, but probably about 2 weeks. So that'll give us enough time to really get some good feedback, but not stretch it out too long so that we can start moving on that final concept. And thank you for helping to push the word out. We really appreciate it. We know the challenges with the school and this time of year as they were coming back and just trying to figure out how to actually be a school. So we appreciate that assistance.
Yeah, if you could, just looking at a calendar, just thinking about the school timeline, we're in our big push for our auction is on the 13th. And so if you could keep it open until like that week of Thanksgiving, it would give us that like, it would give like, if you kept it open that following week, it would at least give us some time to like push it a little better, because of course our primary push right now is the auction.
You said that's on the 13th?
That's on the 13th, and our
Okay.
newsletters go out on the 12th. So if we were to push it the next week, it wouldn't go out until the 19th. I mean, we already have been sending it out, and I mentioned it at the PTA meeting last night, but I think it's getting, it's getting buried in a lot of other things. And I also understand you have a design timeline. So if that's too long, but we could push it heavy on the 19th and hopefully get some people to provide some feedback, and it would be like the primary thing we would push. But
yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, that's not too much additional to hold it open a few more days. That first part of that following week, the week of Thanksgiving, I don't think so. We'll talk with Chris and Lori about that, but that doesn't seem unreasonable.
okay, I'll push it through Congress or through Nextdoor.
Through Congress,
Through
thanks.
Congress. I was going to say Congress Park. I know Congress Park Neighborhood RNO and Miles have done a great job of getting that out there too, and they've been working with Teller. But I'll put it on Nextdoor and try to get it lit up. I'll ask people to like bling it up so it gets some, top ranking or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to give input. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
Jackie.
All right.
The
Any last
responses.
comments or questions?
Oh, this is Miles. My only comment is I wish all city planning projects would work this way. You guys had really good engagement, good feedback, a lot of community support. You guys just done a really good job. And to hear that many people responded is just phenomenal. So good job.
Yeah, we were excited to hear that. Thanks for that feedback, Miles. Really appreciate that.
Thanks again.
You bet.
Thank you.
The next is the probably biggest challenge, which is going to be taking all the feedback and distilling it into, this preferred concept. And inevitably it ends up being kind of the fourth option, right? It's all the best features from the others and mashed together. That's kind of how it typically happens. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how we develop the kind of final plan.
But the nice thing with, I think Flo, you've shown, how to do your designs. You made them all work. And so I think it's an opportunity, and I'm sure you guys will fulfill that quite easily. So thanks again.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Thank you. Thanks for your participation on the advisory group too.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, I think, and
Sounds good.
and close it out. Thank you guys for all your